Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Happy Monday, and it is post-apocalyptic days because RussiaGate doo-doo-doo, seems to, if we're common sense people, if we're all objective, if we're all focused on getting to the truth, seems like RussiaGate should be over. Of course, it won't be because, like with Iraq and weapons of mass destruction, like with many, many other stories, when corporate media outlets, and as we'll see later, even some independent outlets, get things wrong, there's not often, what do they call it, any humble pie that is eaten or offered to the masses. There's just a lot of moving the goalposts, changing the narratives. Oh, I never said that. Woo, what are you talking about? Russian collusion. So first, let me tell you my thoughts, and I'll get more to the media later, but I want to give you my thoughts. So if you didn't see, I interviewed Matt Taibbi last night. That interview is up. Once the news broke and Attorney General Barr's synopsis of the Mueller report was released. Before I do any of that, what am I doing? I'm forgetting. Checklist time. You got to smash that like button. I'm seeing a lot of people watching the live streams, but too often we're getting a hell of a lot of people watching, but not a lot of people liking. Let me explain. The more people that like this live stream, even though it's not a live stream, this is a recorded video because, of course, we're still in the middle of that live stream ban from YouTube. YouTube incorrectly banned us from live streaming for 90 days because CNN filed a false copyright violation. So like this live stream. Also important, don't only like the stream. When you watch videos on this channel, okay? So when you watch any video on this channel, shorter clips, because we cut up these streams into shorter clips, always like the video. Even if you dislike me, like the video, because the way that YouTube's algorithm works, the more people that like the video as well as comment under the video, that gets it to more people that haven't seen it yet, which helps us get more views on the videos. So like this stream right now, but also shorter videos that you watch later, give me a like. Give me a like if you don't mind. It goes a long way. Every person who likes and then every person who comments helps us get into YouTube's algorithm more. So more people will see the channel, more people will press subscribe, which means more views, which means the company grows. Thank you. Become a member to Status Coup. We are 7 members away. 7 members away from 300. And that's 300 members to go with 326 patrons. So overall, we're well over 600 paid monthly / annual subscribers. We really, our business, our network is going to grow not through plutocrats, not through special interests, not through the heinous individuals destroying this country and making you live paycheck to paycheck, destroying our environment, looking the other way when our water gets contaminated or black people get executed or our children get shot up in schools. We are funded by you and only you. So, statuscoup.com/join. Can we get 7 more souls today to become members? You could do it as low as $5 a month, as low as $10 a month. Is real journalism worth it to you? Follow us at Status Coup, at Jordan Sheridan. Subscribe to our podcast, that's bit.ly/Status Coup podcast, and join our email list. Now, first and foremost, regardless of the fact that all of these people that I'm about to show you were wrong for 2 years, engaged in total speculation without facts, basically took their Trump derangement syndrome, which there's plenty of accurate things to go after Trump on. There's plenty of things to go after Trump on. I just tweeted earlier, he is now trying to make it illegal and trying to hide the numbers when we kill innocent people around the world through drones, because he has doubled down. If you thought Obama's drone war was bad, look how many drones Trump and bombs Trump is dropping around the world. It's way worse than Obama. But of course that doesn't get any coverage. Water contamination doesn't get much coverage. Trump's environmental rollbacks gets some stories here and there, not the attention it deserves. So there's plenty to go after Trump on. Of course, his treachery at the border, his treachery with the budget. I mean, there's so much valid stuff to go after Trump on. But for 2.5 years, there's this Cold War sinister plot where Trump and his campaign worked with Russia to help him, whatever the original thing was. They worked together to hack the DNC's emails, hack Podesta's emails, distribute them through WikiLeaks. I told you it was ridiculous 2.5 years ago when I was at the Young Turks. I said, and you know what? I'm not going to lie. I did tell you so, and it feels good to say it. But I said, I think there's clear evidence that Trump, through his business, was money laundering for years through Russian oligarchs, and probably Russian banks. But that's a financial crime. That's not treason. That's not, the Russian government or cutouts or intermediaries working for the Russian government worked with Trump and his campaign to get these emails, to leak them right before the election, or Trump's campaign worked with Russian or companies to disseminate trolls and propaganda. There was never any evidence of this. There really even wasn't circumstantial evidence of this. It was just ratings. It was a ratings ploy. It was a clicks ploy. And there was never any evidence of this. And I don't like Donald Trump. I would love to defeat Donald Trump in the next election. But I never thought you were going to defeat him through a conspiracy theory. And as much as I don't like Donald Trump, I don't like falsehoods more. I don't like sensationalism more. I don't like lying to the audience more. I don't like feeding my audience something that I know isn't true, that I know is more of a Cold War plot movie than legitimate news. And because I said that, because Aaron Maté said that, because Jimmy Dore said that, because Michael Tracy said that, because Matt Taibbi said that, because Lee Camp said that, because Kyle Kalinske said that, because Jamal Thomas said that, because Abby Martin said that. I mean, am I forgetting anyone? We were called Trump supporters. We were told to, are you auditioning for shows on Fox News? There was a McCarthyism that steeped into the culture on Twitter and even in media. Oh, these people who, their conspiracy theories that Trump didn't collude with Russia. Derangement came out. And there's a lot of different elements to this derangement and the damage that has been done and the stories that have not been covered so that we could cover, Trump's evil movie plot where Trump and his campaign might have worked with Russian government to hack emails and distribute them. There's never any evidence of this. Do I think it's the same thing? Do I think it's as damaging as the media's disastrous lack of reporting, disastrous lack of investigation, disastrous lack of skepticism, of cynicism, of basic tenets of what a journalist should be leading up to the Iraq War? No, I do not. Because, we can't compare journalists simply, hyping up a false story and a mass speculation to journalists abdicating their duty, which led to the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and brown people around the world, as well as, nearly 4,000 American soldiers. Not to mention all the veterans who have come home and killed themselves from PTSD for a war that should have never been. I can't compare those two things. But the journalistic malpractice leading up to both, there's a lot of similarities. So with all that said, I believe the full Mueller report needs to be released. 110%. Because Aaron Maté and Jimmy Dore and myself and Michael Tracy and all the other people I've listed, and apologies if I'm forgetting anybody, and Jen Dyes, by the way, Jen Dyes with Status Coup, who just hit 10,000 subscribers, 10,000 Twitter followers. Let me find Jen's Twitter to give you a little plug here if you want to follow her on the Twitter. Let me me see. Hold on. Farewell. I've come to see you go. Jen. So give her a follow. Give her a follow if you can. Just hit 10,000. At Jen Elizabeth. At Jen Elizabeth J. She also called this what it was, a kooky conspiracy theory. But, of course, it should be released, because just because there's no evidence, and now Robert Mueller has said we can't find any criminal conspiracy with the Trump campaign or officials of his campaign and the Russian government, that doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't untoward or unethical things that were done by the Trump campaign or Trump himself related to Russia. The two aren't mutually exclusive. So there could be not criminal things, but unethical things, things beneath what a candidate should be doing or what a campaign should be doing, and those things should be revealed. Would any of those things shock me? No. But is that, if there were untoward things the Trump campaign did, is that the same thing as, conspiring with a foreign government to hack somebody's emails or hack the DNC's emails to distribute them? Is that the same thing as working with a foreign government or intermediaries to push out false information, like Facebook pages, which was absurd to me? Oh, the Russians swung the election because they created fake Facebook pages. No, it's not the same thing. But there should be transparency, so we should know, how did Robert Mueller come to these conclusions? How did he come to the conclusions not to charge Trump? How did he come to the conclusions not to charge anyone in Trump's campaign? I'd like to know. I don't think that's controversial. I think we all should know. Whether the wider American public, who is living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to put food on the table and are deciding between medicine for their kids or groceries for their kids, will take the time to read what's probably a very long report. Probably not. But, so I think the full report should be released. Secondly, I think it's preposterous, absolutely preposterous, that Robert Mueller's findings did not find, or did not, whether he charges or not, or at least did not produce evidence of obstruction of justice. Listen, I don't have Trump derangement syndrome, but facts are facts. Donald Trump clearly obstructed justice during this investigation. That's not criminal collusion. He went on national television announcing he fired the FBI director, James Comey, because he was investigating Trump's campaign's dealings with Russia. He literally announced that he fired the FBI director because he was investigating Trump. That's like blinking red lights, obstruction of justice. So, I mean, I don't. It's mind-boggling, honestly. And if you read Bill Barr's synopsis of the Mueller report, Mueller basically kind of punted on that. He didn't particularly say, I didn't find evidence of obstruction of justice, but he kind of basically said, we're leaving that to the Department of Justice. So, of course, and Bob Barr, in a day and a half, presumably Bob Barr, was being updated in real time as Mueller's findings were coming out. Bob Barr basically said, I didn't find evidence of obstruction of justice. And his reasoning, to me, is ridiculous. He basically is saying that, well, how could there be obstruction of justice if Robert Mueller didn't find criminal collusion? What would Trump be trying to obstruct justice for if there's no actual crime? So there's no crime of collusion between Trump and Trump's campaign officials with Russia. So what exactly would he be trying to obstruct? Maybe, I'm not a lawyer, maybe to the letter of the law, it would be hard to prove criminal obstruction of justice. Maybe that's why Mueller didn't charge it. But, I mean, I think there's plenty of lawyers who could have taken that case. And, frankly, Bob Barr, before he was approved as the Attorney General, he was outspokenly said, was kind of pouring cold water on the Russia investigation, as well as obstruction of justice. So, listen, collusion and obstruction of justice are two different things. I always said there was no evidence of collusion, and if the Democratic Party and all these journalists and commentators who were pushing this kooky conspiracy theory, they could have spent their energy and time looking into Donald Trump's business dealings with Russian oligarchs before he even ran for president. Gee whiz, why does he always talk so kindly about Vladimir Putin? Why does he bow down to Vladimir Putin? Maybe because his business dealings, his business, which he's still making money from, that's way more of a scandal than some sinister plot of Russian collusion. Donald Trump, as president, is making money off of the Trump Organization. The emoluments clause has been violated 7 ways to Sunday. He's still making money. There's no safeguards in that he's not profiting off of his business. It's the head of the ethics office in D.C. resigned over this. But actual scandalous things that the president of the United States is literally making money as president from his private real estate company, which common sense would dictate, gee, maybe some of the policies, maybe some of the decisions I'm making as president, I'm making with my business and profit in mind. Like, say, not changing policy on Saudi Arabia after the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, ordered the execution of Jamal Khashoggi. No, that has nothing to do with Trump making money off of business dealings with Saudi Arabia to this day. I mean, come on. I don't understand. You want to know why? They don't go after that. They never went after these things thoroughly and in depth because that wasn't as sexy as a reenactment of the Cold War. Rachel Maddow's ratings weren't going to go up double. She wasn't going to become the biggest cable news star just talking about Trump's dealings with Saudi Arabia or Israel or filling the United Arab Emirates. No. The cable news audience and the New York Times reader is an older audience. And what does an older audience have? And I'm not criticizing older people because the status quo has plenty of older folks in our audience. We love you equally. But the cable news audience and the New York Times reader is older, and they still have that kind of Cold War sentiment, that Cold War fear. Socialism equals communism. Oh, the evil Russian boogeyman. And if you watch Oliver Stone's brilliant documentary series, The Untold History of the United States, you'll find out that a lot of the Cold War was the same fear-mongering that's gone on for the last 2.5 years. So, and remember, 18 minutes into this, smash the like button. Smash the like button like your life depends on it, because it does. Smash it. More people that like this live stream, the more people that will see this live stream. So don't be a passive viewer. Press that like button. Now, and this is a super chat. So I want to play you a clip. From Jerry Nadler, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And this was his response to Robert Mueller's findings.
Outlining his summary of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report while making a few questionable legal arguments of his own. I take from this letter 3 points. First, President Trump is wrong. This report does not amount to a so-called total exoneration. Special Counsel Mueller was clear that his report, quote, does not exonerate, close quote, the president. The special counsel spent 22 months uncovering evidence of obstruction and other misconduct. Attorney General Barr, who auditioned for his role with an open memorandum suggesting that the obstruction investigation was unconscionable and that it was almost impossible for any president to commit obstruction of justice since he is the head of the executive branch, made a decision about that evidence in under 48 hours. His conclusions raise more questions than the answer, given the fact that Mueller uncovered evidence that, in his own words, does not exonerate the president. It is unconscionable that President Trump would try to spin the special counsel's findings as if his conduct was remotely acceptable. Second, given these questions, it is imperative that the Attorney General release the full report and the underlying evidence. The entire unfiltered report, as well as the evidence underlying that report, must be made available to Congress and to the American.
This is the head of the Judiciary Committee, basically saying, well, I don't know if I believe Robert Mueller. Who, by the way, Robert Mueller, they propped the Democratic Party, Rachel Maddow, all these people propped up this man like he was Jesus' second coming. A man who helped George Bush lie us into a war. YouTube it. Robert Mueller stood up there talking about weapons of mass destruction. And by the way, Robert Mueller rounded up a hell of a lot of Muslim people after 9/11 and profiled them. So Robert Mueller, not a glowing patriot, as the Democrats and the resistance have made him out to be, but that didn't stop him. But now that his report doesn't give Jerry Nadler what he wants, this report doesn't exonerate the president. We need to know what's in it, which I agree. I want the report out. But it's very, very troubling when the head of the Judiciary Committee, we're built on a system in America where you could disagree with a verdict. But when you start challenging the facts, does he think Robert Mueller, does he think William Barr in his synopsis is lying about what Robert Mueller found? Is that what he's saying? Do you think Robert Mueller and his team of 20 lawyers is just sitting by if the Attorney General was lying about what he found? Of course not. Here's Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee with another round of denialism.
Okay, but again, do you believe Robert Mueller when he writes that there was no collusion? Do you accept that conclusion?
I think what I accept is that Robert Mueller did a very thorough job, and he has made the assessment that there was no collusion. Again, that is not a legal term, it's conspiracy, but his decision was based on a whole number of factors and investigations, and what I am saying is we in the Judiciary Committee want to review those documents.
Oh, God. Can't even answer. And again, I'm not defending Donald Trump. I think he's awful. I'd love to beat him. That's why I personally support Bernie Sanders. As I always say, it's not going to affect my reporting. If I find out tomorrow Bernie Sanders is running a money laundering scheme, I'll be the first one to break the news if the facts support it. So I'm not shilling for anyone. I believe what I believe personally. I'm open with the audience about that because I believe, hey, everyone's biased. All journalists are biased. Complete nonsense. When you keep hearing, oh, you're supposed to be a neutral journalist and not have an opinion. Please. It's not about what your opinion is. Do you have your facts correct? Are your facts correct? Because if your opinion is making you fudge facts, that's the fastest way to get banned from this industry. And most of the time, these neutral journalists on CNN, their facts are complete nonsense because they're just regurgitating as stenographers what the government tells them. But anyway, I digress. So, Sheila Jackson Lee, again, I agree. Let's see the report because there could be things in that report that prove unethical behavior by Trump and his campaign, prove untoward things. There's a whole range of possibilities. But to not even answer, do I accept Mueller's verdict that he didn't criminally conspire or collude, whatever? Come on. This is ridiculous. And I would say this if the shoe were on the other foot and it was President Hillary Clinton, if the Republicans were acting this way. We can't live in this post-truth universe. Here's a short clip from my interview last night with Rolling Stone's Matt Taibbi, where we touch on that it's not only the media and their disastrous coverage of this, but there's also dangerous consequences because now all of these people that are suddenly saying, "Oh no, I wasn't talking about collusion for many years. I never said that." They were pushing Trump and provoking Trump, and now tensions have risen to the point where we've pulled out of the INF nuclear treaty. Here we go. And remember, smash the like button. Smash it. More people that like, more people that see.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things to look at here, but just to get back, let's first address the whole issue of consequence, because I had a lot of blowback from people saying, how can you possibly compare the two things? One of them led to hundreds of thousands of people dying, and then we had a permanent presence in the Middle East. But this caper has not played itself out completely, and even though the whole idea of Trump and collusion has fallen by the wayside, there's a whole range of secondary things that were set into motion by this story that are not even close to having reached a conclusion, like the whole idea of tightened internet censorship, or a more aggressive foreign policy posture towards Russia, or more enhanced surveillance of internet activity, who your associations were, the policing of political advertising. I think there's lots of things that we don't know how this is going to work out yet. We do know that they've created lots of different sort of new bodies to look at preventing things that they associated with the Russia crisis, both here and in Britain. You hear about things like the Integrity Initiative, right, which are designed to combat Russian influence operations and all that. So all of that's one thing. But
also to add, pulling out of the INF treaty recently also.
Oh, yeah, of course. All that stuff makes the world dramatically more unsafe, and we're in a couple of places in the world now. Russian American troops are within a heartbeat of each other, and tensions are, the doomsday clock that was started in the 50s by the Federation of Atomic Scientists. It's never been closer to midnight than it is now. We're in a dangerous place in the world. But in terms of the media, the difference between this incident and the WMD incident was the entire spectrum of sort of non-conservative news media not only bought this story, but they completely rejected any dispositive information. It was impossible. There were a few voices like you and me and Aaron Mate and Glenn Greenwald who became a villain. Not just not listened to, but his very name became an insult online, really over this story.
I remember New York Magazine did a profile piece on him, which was basically portraying him as kind of a Russian stooge.
Yeah, exactly. And the New Yorker did one, the bane of their resistance, right? And they portrayed him as a sort of Emmanuel Goldstein character, right, who was up to God knows what. And this scared a lot of reporters. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of colleagues who kind of whispered to me in private about, I don't know if I want to say anything about this, right? Because everybody saw what happened to people who stuck their noses out about this. There weren't many of us, but not many of us had our careers go well.
And there's kind of I was ostracized for different reasons, which is a whole different subject. But there was kind of this ostracizing where, if you're trying to get freelance gigs with certain outlets or whatever the case may be, you're one of these kooky RussiaGate or Russia conspiracy theorists. Like us questioning it was the conspiracy theory because it's just fact that this has legs.
Right, yeah, no, exactly. And that was what was so weird about it, because my take on it, from the start was really super conservative. That was the odd thing about it. Like, I tried to take the position of, there are facts in the story that look bad, but we have a bad experience in the past with getting over our skis with a certain kind of story, right? And those stories are the ones that are fueled by unnamed official sources from the security services, and especially ones that involve private, unconfirmed opposition research. That's a very toxic combination. It's the kind of story that you always want to be a little bit careful about. And so, really the extent of my criticism from the beginning was just, we should sort of be reluctant to make sweeping declarations about the meaning of this until we know exactly what it is. And incidentally, we still don't know, right? Like there are huge unknowns about this story even now. Like, how did it start? Does anybody know the answer to that question? Do you know? Like there were multiple theories that were posited in the press over the years about why the FBI started investigating. First they told us it was because of Carter Page. Then they told us it was because of Papadopoulos. Then it turned out it was because Robert Hannigan of the GCHQ in Britain briefed John Brennan, who in turn briefed the FBI. Like, what's the real story? So reporters always need to sort of have the whole lay of the land before they really plant their feet and start talking about things, and we just never did that with this story. And any suggestion that we should do that was met with immediate condemnation in a way that was unprecedented, I thought.
So that full interview is up on Status Quo. I'll put the link right in the super chat. Remember to smash the like button. Remember to smash the like button. And remember, we do have a GoFundMe going. So let me tell you where we're at with that. We have passed 1,000 donors. We're now at 1,018 donors. We've raised $50,720. And we just boosted our goal by 5,000 to 75,000. Promise. That's it. Not raising it any higher. So $25,000 less, actually less than $25,000 left to go. Thank you to Kelly Elaine, donated $20 today. Steve Howlett, $5. Kelly Cannon, $25. Tom Bradburn, $25. Karen Hancock, $5. Michael Cooper, $5. Anonymous, $5. Patrick Coyne, $27. $10 to Anonymous, and $100 to my Uncle Joel Sheridan, my good old uncle. Thank you very much. Remember, $100 gets you a shirt or a hat. Status Quo shirt or hat. $127 get you both, and more get you some of these goodies. So keep it coming if you can. Would love to hit 51,000 by the end of this live stream, and we are at 50,720. Oh, I keep saying live stream. This is recorded, not live. So I hate to do this, and I don't do this often. I don't play Young Turks clips. To tell you the truth, since I've left the Young Turks, I might have seen 5 or 6 of their videos. I don't generally watch it. Not out of bitterness, I just don't enjoy it. Because they cover a lot of things that you could find on mainstream media. But I got to keep it real. In addition to Rachel Maddow, in addition to CNN, the Washington Post, New York Times, I mean, even when I was there, the Young Turks was really covering this Russia story quite a bit. And I remember, I was on a panel with Cenk and Nomiki and Michael Tracy, where Cenk was openly talking about, he said Russia swung the election, and I pushed back on that, saying, what do you mean he swung the election? And I remember Cenk openly speculating about, Trump's campaign colluding with Russia. And what I thought at the time was a real lack of skepticism and, research and investigating, just kind of like latching on to this Trump derangement stuff. And I'm not criticizing him or the Young Turks for any other reason than, independent media plays a key role, because we're the ones that are supposed to expose the corporate media's lies. We're the ones that are supposed to expose the corporate media's sensationalism. We're the ones that are supposed to expose the corporate media's propaganda and sheer, drive for ratings. So when independent outlets start kind of drinking the Kool-Aid themselves, then what are people left with? You got corporate media, being sensational. And then you have independent media being sensational and pushing speculation as if they're facts. So I found it interesting. Somebody sent this to me that since the report came out, suddenly the Young Turks and Cenk, suddenly they never pushed that there was collusion. Suddenly that's the case where Cenk says he never pushed the collusion theory.
Mueller report is in, and then Attorney General Barr has now apparently said that it clears him of collusion during the election. I am not surprised by that. I will explain. I have been explaining for years on the Young Turks now, literally years, if anyone cares to pay attention. And then the second charge is obstruction of justice, and he did not clear him on that. So Mueller said that it was a close call, then he leaves it up to the Department of Justice. And now the Department of Justice is run by Barr, who is a Trump lackey. That's why he was picked and put into that role. And Barr immediately, without any further investigation, cleared the president of obstruction of justice. So what do I think about obstruction of justice? Well, if I thought that there was no collusion before, during, or after the election, I would actually understand the Attorney General's decision, because he'd say, look, it looked like Trump was covering it up when he went on national TV and he said he fired James Comey to make sure he didn't do the Russia investigation. And if there's no collusion, then I guess he wasn't covering it up. He's just being weird. So I would understand that. But apparently I have a unique take on this, because the Democrats, and based on the reaction today on television as well, apparently really thought that the collusion happened directly during the election, where Trump and the Russians were working together to steal the election from poor Hillary Clinton. So that has not been my contention on the Young Turks. I definitely think there is collusion, so I want to be absolutely clear about that. And for those of you who missed...
Whew! Not been my contention on the Young Turks. Yeah, no. Not my contention. Never was. I saw another video where he said that he actually was saying that the collusion happened after the election, not during the election. Tweet it out. Let me be clear before we find out what's in Mueller report. My contention has been that the collusion was after the election. So, I guess videos like this prove Trump campaign colluded with Russia?
So there's the collusion right there. The question is, what's inside? We might find out right there. So there's the collusion right there. The question is, what's inside? We might find out in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. That video was in reference to this story. Was there a connection between a Russian bank and the Trump campaign? And that story by the New Yorker was talking about a story, a possible connection during the campaign. But he never was pushing the collusion theory. No. And again, you're not going to believe me, but I'm being honest with you. I'm not like, listen, if I wanted to take on Cenk and the Young Turks, I would do it. There's plenty of other examples of segments they did that are a little loose on the facts and pretty heavy on speculation and not very well researched. But to me, honestly, the biggest issue, I mean, Cenk, he, like, moving the goalposts is an understatement. He's not just moving the goalposts, he's not telling the truth, right? Like, it's a fabrication that he did not allege Trump and Trump's campaign colluded with the Russian government. He did, many times. And by the way, just because other people did, it doesn't make them like bad people. It doesn't mean they should like resign and be fired. You get things wrong. Sometimes as a journalist or a commentator, your bias becomes too thick and it blinds you. There's nothing wrong with simply saying, listen, on this, I was wrong. I wasn't skeptical enough. I wasn't cynical enough. I didn't do my homework enough. And you know what? It's a lesson, and I'm going to do better next time. I would say it if I was wildly wrong and engaged in speculation and Trump derangement syndrome. I think audiences actually appreciate a little humility, a little slice of humble pie. I do as a consumer, of people that I like, if they were wrong on something and just admitted it. It's when people, not just Cenk, but other media individuals and politicians, like, they can't ever acknowledge being wrong about something. That's an issue, because that's a whole different psychological category as far as people who just refuse to acknowledge fault or being wrong or about anything. This isn't a small thing to be wrong about, because my biggest issue, as I said in the beginning of this, and remember, smash the like button so more people can see this. My biggest issue is not so much that they were wrong about the Trump campaign colluding with Russia. And I keep saying I want to see the report. Because it doesn't mean, just because there's no criminal charges of collusion, doesn't mean there wasn't unethical things that Trump or his campaign did. But my biggest complaint, particularly when you're talking about independent media, and frankly, if you want to know the truth, I had these conversations with them when I was there. When you focus so much on something that doesn't have facts to support it, segment after segment, show after show, hour after hour, you're not covering Flint. You're not covering Standing Rock. You're not covering East Chicago. You're not covering the mass shootings. You're not covering the water contamination. You're not covering the pipeline protests. You're not covering the state and local level corruption. You're not covering what independent media exists for, to show what's actually happening in America, to show what's actually happening in the world. Independent media is supposed to fill the void because corporate media is not going to cover these things. It's not in their business interest to do so. Which is why status quo exists. We exist to cover what's actually happening. We exist to show you the real America, not Sarah Palin's real America, like real America. That's why, and we're 7 members away, you should become a status quo member for as low as $5 a month, or $10 a month, or $20 a month, or $179 annually. This is how we grow, and this is how we stay actually independent. But frankly, it's just not true what he's saying. It's disingenuous, and it's moving. It's not just moving the goalposts. It's moving to an entirely different stadium. So, that's the truth. And I don't really talk about the Young Turks that much, and I don't really focus on their coverage because there's more important things to do. But listen, if you're wrong, just admit you were wrong. Don't pretend otherwise. And I hope, not just the Young Turks, but other, because there were other independent outlets that covered this a lot, obviously the corporate media, I don't expect them to, because honestly, at the end of the day, CNN, MSNBC, to a lesser degree, TYT, it's a business. So if you're getting clicks, if you're getting ratings, that they're going to keep doing that. And that's unfortunate. Like, our model is actually not views. Our model is actually not necessarily getting 1 million views and making everything go viral. Of course, that's what we want to happen. And we believe if we keep doing what we're doing and keep covering the right stories. I'm about to play a clip in a little bit of one of my interviews at a homeless shelter in Seattle. We believe the clicks will come. We believe the views will come. But the reason we are trying to grow on membership, meaning you pay $5 to $10 a month, or you pay $179 a year for us to do what we do, to support us so we could have funding to go in the field, then we don't necessarily have to target everything to getting 1 million clicks or getting advertisers or, getting corporate funding, because we're funded by you. So it's not necessarily a matter of, oh God, we're not meeting our quota for how many clicks we have, for how much views we get, or how much subscribers we get, because we have the viewers, and that's the most important thing. And that's how you should grow a media network. And that's 99% of the cable outlets, of the digital outlets, of the print outlets don't operate that way. Status quo does. We're not here only to get views, only to go viral. We believe those things will happen. Obviously, YouTube suppressing us has hurt us and hurt a lot of other independent channels. But listen, I really truly believe that Cenk believed this. I actually think Rachel Maddow believes it. Still, I never watch Rachel Maddow, but I will be watching her tonight because get your popcorn. I want to see what lunacy she comes up with to respond to the Mueller report's findings. Because now she's going to say, well, maybe it was aliens that went through Trump's toupee and they colluded with the Russian government. So it wasn't Trump, it was the aliens through Trump that did it. I mean, come on. But that's the problem. Like, you know what? If you're wrong, just say you're wrong. Explain what you got wrong. Admit that you didn't necessarily wear your skepticism hat the way you should have. You didn't do enough research. You kind of were wearing blinders because you hate Trump so much, and be done with it. Move on. So I hope that's what we'll be hearing, but don't necessarily expect that. So why does this all matter? Why does this all matter? And I touched on this, but I really want to stress it more. Why does this all matter? Listen, I don't do this to try and rehabilitate the corporate media. I want to overthrow the corporate media. And I believe the more we operate, the more years under our belt, the more we grow, corporate media will become more and more obsolete. Because let me make something clear. Status quo, we do not have any competition because there are not any national outlets. There might be some good local freelancers that I don't know about. And when we have funding, I'd love to know about more freelancers because we want to hire more reporters. But we don't have any competition to cover the real stories going on. And that's a shame. Because you want to know the truth? All the attention, all the segments, whether it's CNN, Rachel Maddow, the Young Turks, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all the resources that went into a conspiracy theory with no facts to back it up. I have been to Flint, Michigan 13 times. Since I started Status Quo, I've been there 4 times. I was there, I believe, 9 times with the Young Turks. Flint, Michigan, and the fact that April 25th will be 5 years since they've had clean water, it's not just a national scandal and emergency. It's not just an international scandal and emergency. It is a crime against humanity. It should be covered as a crime against humanity. It should be leading broadcasts. When's the last time Rachel Maddow covered Flint? When's the last time MSNBC had anyone in Flint? New York Times, when they're not trying to steal my story, which you'll find out about when we release the documentary, The Flushing of Flint, next month. Status Quo's first documentary will be coming out towards the end of April to go with the 5-year anniversary. When's the last time the Young Turks has been in Flint? When's the last time any of these outlets have covered pipeline protests? Do you know that fracking is one of the biggest contributors now to climate change? Obviously, a report recently came out saying we have 12 years as a planet before irreversible damage is done. And frankly, there's already been irreversible damage done. When's the last time a mass shooting has been treated as the horrific, abnormal tragedy that New Zealand is treating it as? And you had media cover it for more than a day. Have reporters out there. Have reporters challenge these politicians taking blood money from the NRA. Well, how could they do that if they're too busy doing segment after segment after segment speculating about the Russian boogeyman and the new Cold War? When's the last time any of these outlets have done a really, truly deep dive into the fact that evil, greedy pharmaceutical companies are killing Americans all over by pumping deadly and addictive opioids into their communities? You know what I'm talking about, West Virginia. You know what I'm talking about, Indiana. You know what I'm talking about, New Hampshire. You know what I'm talking about, Ohio. I could go on. And that's one thing I've wanted to cover more at Status Coup. We just don't have the funding to get out there yet, but we will. When's the last time any of these outlets have been covering the growing attacks on LGBTQ people, particularly transgender people? Veteran suicide? Not just Flint, other places, and the water catastrophe all over this country. Now with PFAS, a cancer-causing chemical made through the manufacturing of Teflon, being found in many, many water bodies. It's the last time you've seen any of these outlets cover the fact that Native Americans have the highest cancer rate in America. Why? Because we dump uranium mines on reservations. We dump plutonium near reservations. We're drilling on reservations. All this toxic shit going into the air and the water, not to mention destroying their land. This is the last time any of these outlets went and interviewed people, homeless people. I just did. I'm about to play you the clip. When's the last time any of these outlets challenged somebody like Jeff Bezos? Not about his, affairs and that stuff and the sexting scandal and all this, but about the fact that the man makes $266 million a day, yet refuses to pay any federal income tax, his company. Fought to stop a head tax from passing in Seattle that would have charged $250 per Amazon employee to go towards the homeless epidemic and affordable housing that Amazon has created in Seattle. When's the last time you've seen coverage of that? You need me to keep going? Smash the like button. If you haven't liked this stream, smash it. When is the last time any of these outlets have covered the fact the United States is currently at war in Afghanistan? In 2021, we will be at war in Afghanistan for 20 years. That's less than 2 years from now. We're at war. Not to mention the bombing 9 other countries. When's the last time anyone, aside from a few articles here and there, covered the fact that we are the accomplices to genocide in Yemen? When's the last time that you've seen any of these outlets cover the fact that state by state by state, laws are being passed or attempted to being passed to criminalize protest, to criminalize people protesting in America? Mostly environmental protesters who protest, by the law, critical infrastructure, i.e., the oil companies' pipelines that pay off us, the politicians. When's the last time any of these outlets covered the fact that cities in America are passing an increase in the minimum wage only for the state legislatures to overturn those cities? When's the last time that any of these outlets have covered the fact that ballot measures are passing? Ballot measures meaning direct democracy. The people vote for the policy and it passes on the ballot. Only for the state legislatures to overturn it. Meaning the state legislatures are overturning the will of the people. And you want to talk about threats of attacks on our democracy from Russian trolls? We don't have a democracy in this country. We have an oligarchy. Honestly, I could keep going, but in the spirit of not having this stream go 3 hours, I want to play you a clip so you actually see what I'm talking about. And this is not to toot my horn. This is not to toot Status Quo's horn. I ain't gonna lie. Part of it is to get you to sign up as a member. statusquo.com/join. You can do it. $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. We're going to be having our monthly video call with our $10 or higher members coming up Wednesday. So Wednesday night, if you're a $10 Coup de Champion or higher, Coup de Commander, or part of the Coup de Cavalry, you'll get an invite to our Zoom call, which is a video call with me. And you're on video, and we talk whatever you want to talk about. Q&A, ideas, questions you have for me, comments, concerns. So become a member at $10 or higher by Wednesday. You'll be invited to that call. Want to play you a clip of my interview with an organizer in Seattle. He's an activist. He used to be homeless, right at a homeless encampment that I interviewed him on a Saturday. That homeless encampment was being swept up 2 days later, and the homeless people evicted. I want you to see what's actually happening in this country, this booming economy. Here's my interview with Matthew.
Hey, it's Jordan. I'm here at the Trolls Knoll encampment, I guess because it's on a little grassy knoll, and it's pretty jarring. I mean, I guess it's not jarring to you because you see it too much, but this basic little tent city is right next to just really nice new apartments in a really nice area of Seattle. So Matthew, you do a lot of work with these kind of encampments and trying to help alleviate some of this. I mean, the numbers are pretty staggering with homelessness in Seattle. I think a Guardian story I just read said like over 4,000 public school children are homeless or couch surfing or whatever. Can you kind of talk about your involvement with this encampment?
Yeah, well, first of all, the statistic that we're talking about for the 4,000 Seattle public school students, that only counts people who are not necessarily doubled up or living on a couch. Those are homeless children. So they're living in a car, they're living in a camp or in a shelter. So just wanted to make that quick distinction. As far as this work goes, I've been helping in camps for about 2 years now. It's hard because we did a lot of work last year around, there was a tax on big business that we were trying to pass, the head tax, and there was a lot of work around homelessness going there. And in a lot of ways, a lot of folks are really hard hit by homelessness as a crisis. You know, there's poverty like literally in the streets. You've got your luxury condo across the way from people living in tents, and there's this huge wealth disparity that's happening. As far as the sweeps go, I think it is a response to the camps that is inappropriate.
When you say sweeps, just the city's coming in, basically evicting people.
Right. So, when I'm talking to the city, I make very sure to call it an eviction because right now in Washington State and the city of Seattle, we're doing a lot of great work on eviction reform, and we've highlighted some great places. There's a study called Losing Home that was done by the Seattle Women's Commission and the King County Bar Association. They came out a couple months ago that showed that so many people that are coming straight out of evictions are ending up right on the street, and then finding themselves in cycles of chronic homelessness. So when I say sweeps, I mean encampment removals. The city calls them encampment cleanups, as if it were just a bunch of garbage that needed to be swept along. Like I said, I prefer evictions myself because it's really what it is. I had a bout with living in my car in and out for about 2 years right out of college, and I did sometimes have housing, but I was evicted twice in that period. And when I see the city's notice come up for these encampment removals, I really see it kind of the way I felt in those times that I was evicted. And there's 72 hours notice generally, maybe a week that's given notice. I don't think that's really enough time to get past even the first stage of grieving. and start thinking about where you're going to go, what are you going to do with your things. And the city doesn't provide a place for them to go. Now, the city will say that they do. They're trying to bring people inside. That's shelter service. In a lot of places, that's not really adequate for the needs of the people that are here in these camps, or really, I think, anyone's actual needs as a human. Like some of the shelters are 24-hour shelters that you have a cubicle and a bed and place to store your things in a locked area, and that works for a lot of folks. But when they are removing these camps, they have to have at least enough shelter space for each one of the campers before they come and remove the camp. So some of those spaces are on the floor in the lobby at City Hall, where they have about 100 air mattresses lined up 12 to 18 inches away from each other. They throw a plastic bag on there that has a blanket and a pillow. But when you are staying in that shelter, you're not going to get a good night's sleep. You are in by 9 p.m. and you are kicked out at 6 a.m. And then it's so easy to catch sicknesses from other people around because it's in such a tight capacity. That's just one example of what they're naming as an acceptable shelter bed for someone who, as you can see with these camps, people have their whole lives here. Now, the navigation team that performs these encampment removals, they do offer storage space. There's a big warehouse in Sodo, in the Sodo neighborhoods here in Seattle, that they have a very detailed way of keeping track of people's things. But only about 14% of people can actually go back and access their things for whatever reason.
So, I'm going to call this what I think it is. This kind of looks like a class cleansing of the city of Seattle, the state of Washington, but more specifically, plutocrats. This is my opinion, I'm not asking you. Basically trying to push out anyone that's not making $100,000 a year, software developer, computer programmer. Nothing wrong with making $100,000 a year, nothing wrong with having expertise or skills. This isn't to say they shouldn't be able to live in Seattle, but it seems like the city of Seattle and Washington State has really made a choice to bend over backwards for Amazon, for Boeing, for these multi-billion, well, Amazon's now trillion, instead of affordable housing, job programs, and you see it. I mean, it's a tale of two cities wherever you go. Gentrified apartment condos next to tent cities. What does that say kind of about this country? Forget the state, but this country, when you have this. And it's not just Seattle. Look at San Francisco, Portland, Chicago. 14 homeless people just died in the polar vortex. How are we allowing this to happen?
Well, I think that goes really deep into systems problems that we have here in America. I would push back that it's not just a class cleansing, it's a racial cleansing as well. In the homeless population here in Seattle, in the last count that came out, they do a one-night count in the winter every year. There were 29% of the homeless population were African American people. Only 8% of the entire population of Seattle is African American. Same thing with natives. We've got Alaska natives and indigenous people that are living here in Seattle. They make up less than 1% of the entire population of the city, and they make up about 7 or 8% of the homeless population. So, we got to talk about this from not only a class lens, but as well from a race lens. And now, if we are going to look at it from both of those lenses, and about Boeing is like, they're not necessarily my great friends. They held the city hostage about 20 years ago themselves, but they made a responsible decision when they built their headquarters. They built in the suburbs. They built in Renton, Washington, right? Sure, the airfield is here in Seattle, but they built their headquarters and they built those homes down in Renton where there was less already happening. Amazon decided to plunk themselves right in the middle of South Lake Union neighborhood, a busy neighborhood in Seattle, immediately gentrifying a lot of people. I think that if we're going to look at it through a race and class lens, then we have to look at what Amazon is doing as a colonizing force in Seattle, right? And we're not talking about, we're not necessarily talking about European settlers coming onto shore, but we are talking about these people who are coming in and bringing people from outside and pushing out the people that already are there, and putting them in situations like this where they're literally dying in front of them on the streets, where you have people living in tents and these luxury apartments, where you have super high wealth. We have 3 of the most wealthy people in the world within a 5-mile radius of where we're standing right now.
Jeff Bezos,
Steve Ballmer, until recently Bill Gates, rather. And Paul Allen was also one of those. He just recently passed away. But we have immense wealth here in Seattle because it's a tax shelter state.
No income tax.
No income tax in Washington. So it attracts really wealthy people because they might have to pay a sales tax or a property tax, but that is just pennies for them. Whereas someone who's living on the street, that 10 cents on a dollar actually really affects them. That's 10% of the already low to no income that they're already making. And that's every transaction. We're talking every burrito, every drink, every toothpaste, toothbrush, whatever. You get hit on that, and it really affects the poor in Washington State at a much more disproportionate rate.
And of course, I've only spoken with 1 or 2 people, but the impression I get from the numbers, a lot of these people actually want to work. A lot of the homeless here want to work or have some college study. They've studied in college or they have degrees. But when prices have gone up, I think 70% housing went up in the last couple of years. They can't afford it.
Right. It's really insane. Imagine this situation. You're living in homelessness because you were just evicted. You couldn't make the $400 rent increase that your landlord just imposed on you for a new lease. And suddenly you've become homeless. You tried the shelters. You got sick. You tried the shelters. You couldn't sleep because someone was having a mental health break that night, and no one slept in that shelter. You maybe just got released from prison and can't get housing because you've got some sort of criminal act on your record. Those people end up here oftentimes, and if you go to a job interview and you haven't had access to a shower, to a toilet, how are you going to? How is the person supposed to get a job in this environment? So about 30% of the homeless population is employed, but another 70% of the homeless population is disabled. So the health effects of living outside have really impacted a lot of these folks. And like I said, 70% are living with disability and may not even be able to work at this point. Now, obviously, there are many differently abled people that can work, and in this population as well. But when you're looking at the numbers like that, it's pretty staggering.
And as a society, most of us have iPhones. We don't worry about how are those iPhones made, who are making them, in what factories, how hot is it in those factories. Is there a role to play here from people, including myself, who order from Amazon all over this country, all over the world, for expedience, comfort, convenience? You get good products, cheaper in a lot of cases, but most of these, I would venture to guess, most people ordering from Amazon don't see this or don't know about it.
Right. I think that's a tricky question, right? I order things on Amazon sometimes. My individual contribution of $5 here when I really needed that thing for this one thing, right? Like it's not my favorite, but it's the truth, right? I needed it on my doorstep the next day. It was there, and I try to avoid to do that as much as I can. If I can get it locally, I will absolutely go to a local small business. I've got a story for you. I went to a bookstore here, Secret Garden Books on Market Street in Ballard. I get all my books there. They're a wonderful group of folks that run a great business. And they they had this one book that I was looking for, and I think the price was going to be like $8 on Amazon, and it was going to be $24 at the bookstore. And I was stressed out, and like not in the best mood that day anyway. So when she told me it was $24, I was like, oh, I'll just go buy it at Amazon. The look at her face when I said that, it looked like I had really struck a heart chord there. So I walked out, got halfway down the street, and then I said, no, I have to buy it here. Turn it around. And do that. And I think if we can get people really to think about their local communities, shopping local, and staying together as a community, I think that's really where we come up against this. And a lot of the stuff that Elizabeth Warren's been talking about with the antitrust work that she's been doing, I think that's the right way to go. We shouldn't have these huge mega corporations ruling our lives.
Lastly, obviously Trump with his ridiculous national emergency, which isn't an emergency on the non-existent border crisis. You have the Democratic Party nationally. It seems their emergency is Vladimir Putin and Russian trolls online. Yeah. I mean, this seems to me to be an actual emergency. Again, not just Seattle. I mean, we're talking many, many cities now, and it's not even just homelessness. It's people basically living in squalor if they have a home over a roof over them. Wouldn't this be an emergency if it's a nation? Because I actually call it the United Corporations of America. I don't even call it a country anymore because it's been bought. Yeah. I mean, this seems to be an emergency. How do you have a nice gentrified country, a couple blocks with nice apartments, nice homes, Starbucks and bars and restaurants? I was just downtown on First Avenue where all the hotel restaurants and bars are, and you see people sleeping out in sleeping bags and people just walking by. I mean, they do that all over the country, but there's really just it's been normalized here where that's just a price of business for Amazon to be here. Do you consider this an emergency, a crisis? I mean, what should people do? What should people think?
Yeah, it is absolutely an emergency. The city of Seattle declared it an emergency, a public emergency about 3 years ago, and hasn't really been able to get their hands on it. I think there's been a lot of there's this thing called the Seattle process where we work and work and work and work and we try to find consensus and then we budge just a little bit, right? And that doesn't work for this kind of thing. We have to radically change how we think about things. And when I say that this is a crisis that's repeated itself, 200 years ago, this was the native population's problem, right? And I think that if we're going to look at solutions, we need to look at Native leaders in our community who have been dealing with this issue with displacement, with gentrification, and being unhoused just in general and discriminated against. And we need to look to their leadership and see what they're doing. I think if we can finally end urban indigenous homelessness, then we can start really unpacking what's going on in the other communities that are affected by it. Just here we are, we're on stolen Duwamish land, a couple of white guys.
How could people get involved? I mean,
Let me ask you a question. What's the bigger scandal, Russia or that? One of my main frustrations as a journalist is, I love doing those kinds of interviews, and I love being able to spotlight that, because the more people that see that, the more people that are exposed to that, the more people will get, I don't want to say woke, but aware. And awareness leads to activism, and activism leads to change. My activism is journalism. I don't mean that to be corny, but that's what I personally believe. But I wish I could stay longer. Every time I wish I could stay longer, because I don't want to just tell the story. I want to challenge some folks. Folks need to be challenged. Amazon needs to be challenged. Politicians in Seattle need to be challenged, because that's a scandal. The reason people are out and homelessness is so bad in Seattle and Portland and San Francisco and Chicago and New York and DC and LA. the politicians in these cities, in these states, and in this country have been bought by Amazon and Walmart, Microsoft, and all of these companies that are causing massive gentrification. I wouldn't have a problem if Amazon came into Seattle, created a whole lot of jobs, but one group of people's success, meaning software developers or tech people, people making six figures, shouldn't mean the displacement, suffering, and misery of a whole other group of working people. When I say people, I mean human beings. So when you see human beings sleeping outside, we're never going to eradicate all homelessness. Some homeless people, frankly, are homeless because of terrible decisions they made, laziness, whatever it is, and they don't want to work. But the majority of these people out at these places want to work. I interviewed a homeless man a year older than me. The reason he can't go get a job, the reason he can't go to a job interview is every time he leaves his encampment, his belongings are stolen. Or if they leave the encampment, city officials come in and get rid of their stuff. Just toss them out like trash. You want to say Russia is a scandal and a threat to our holy democracy is trolls online or Russian, the government in Russia? This is all distraction. It's all deflection. This is all a way, the corporate media and the other outlets that have been drumming the beat on Russia, 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 is so they don't have to cover this. Because if they have to cover this, if they have to show this, then people have to start asking questions. Well, what about these multi-billion-dollar, or in Amazon's case, trillion-dollar corporate conglomerates? Well, wait a minute. These same media outlets are owned by those outlets. The Washington Post is owned by Amazon. No wonder they don't cover what I just showed you. CNN is owned by AT&T. AT&T has been one of the biggest culprits in our surveillance state. MSNBC, NBC is owned by Comcast, which is responsible for attacking and destroying net neutrality. The New York Times, one of its largest investor, is Carlos Slim, a Mexican plutocrat and big oil guy. No wonder they barely cover climate change. Or the fact that they held a money and oil conference last year. The list goes on, folks. You want real reporting? You want some accountability? You want actual emergencies and scandals to be covered that way? statuscoup.com/join. We're 7 members away. We might be even less. We might be even closer because I recorded this earlier, so we might have some people that signed up during this stream. Is more journalism like that? Not just from me. The vision for Status Coup, let me make it clear, is not to have this face constantly. I will be a big part of it. But we want to build. We want new reporters. We want to cover many different things at once, all over this country. Hey, one day maybe around the world. And it's a simple proposition. We not only want you to help us build it, we need you to help us build it. I cannot build it myself. I'm not the federal government. Can't print the money. But the more people that put it into their minds and put it into their budget, you know what? Status Coup isn't just entertainment. It's essential. We need it. We need real journalism. We need people like Jordan and Ty and Jen and whoever else we could bring on down the road out there telling the stories of real people, of real struggle, of real scandal, of real corruption. That's how actual change and action is going to be taken. Let me tell you something, folks. I always say it. The majority of people in this country, and I've seen it, I've been to a lot of different places, and I've spoken with a lot of different people. Majority of people in this country, even Republicans, even your neoliberal auntie, are not lacking compassion. Most of them don't know there's real scandal and corruption and injustice going on, including my lovely mother, who might be watching right now. You know, my mother literally called me early today. She was watching my interview with Matt Taibbi yesterday in the live chat, and she said, "What do you want me to do when I'm there? Do you want me to comment or stay hidden? I said, you could comment. Well, what do you want me to say? Tell people to become a member, Mom. Well, I don't want to seem like I'm, exploiting. No, tell them this is my son and support him. I would support him if Mama Sheridan told him to. But that's the key. You're not just supporting me. You're supporting those people that I'm covering. You're supporting those people in Flint who are having their stories told, who are having accountability. Our report, Jen and my report in November, that this documentary that we're releasing next month is about. That report is currently being investigated by the state of Michigan Attorney General's office. Not like they're investigating us. They're investigating what we found. We were able to knock on nearly 500 doors because you funded us to be there. That's the only reason. Yes, it was our legs and our arms and our work ethic to do it. But you funded it. So it's only responsible because of you. So how is this all connected? We'll let the corporate media, and frankly some in the independent space nowadays, create the distraction, deflect, distract, sensationalize, push out RussiaGate. Today it's RussiaGate, tomorrow will be a new faux scandal. It leaves us with the golden opportunity to tell you the real story of this United Corporations of America. I hope you'll join us, statuscoup.com/join. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Was a little late today. Thank you for your support. Peace out.